Okay, Freilich Chanukah, everyone. Wonderful to have everybody to do the best thing possible on Chanukah. There's a lot of nice things to do on Chanukah. There's sufganiyot, and there's latkes, and there's dancing, and there's singing, and there's jelly donuts. But the best thing to do is learning Torah. That's the best avodah. We're holding on the bottom of Lamed Daled Amud Beis at the new Gemara, which is 8 lines from the bottom, and we welcome in Shimon Klein, Mel Zachter, Mo Kushner, Baruch Ian. Baruch, I had the red carpet out for you. I don't know. Yitzi Muller, Irving Fishbaum, Marshall Castle, A.B. Spry, Ben-Zion Cohn, Nachman Chapler, Aaron Swade, Menachem Yemansky. Is that Menachem Yemansky? Yeah. Yitzi Fuchs, Michael, Shalom Fogel, Ruven Pollack, Dr. Block, Eddie Chazan, Dr. Guy, Moshe Lehman, Ruven Guy, Shelley Zeitlin, Abe Arbach, the Stern family, David Helfgott. Here we have in Shul, Berish Gesserman, Rich Lenner, Saba, Avram Shankman, Ruven Shanit, and we are dedicated by A.B. Spry for the Archayolim, who are fighting in many, many different fronts for the recovery of the hostages, for the health of those that were wounded, for safety of all of Klal Yisrael, especially Isu Zev ben Yuta, Shimon Klein, Nishmas Asher, Anshe ben Yehuda, Yitabah Shimon Pinchas, Irving Fishbaum, for Issa ben Rezel, Abidaya ben Rivka, Meir ben Chayesar. They should have Refuah Shalema, B'Seich Shar Chayla Yisrael. So, and by the way, there is I recorded today a segment called For the Shabbos Table, and that's already on Torah Anytime YouTube on Kol Loshen. The share that I gave last night, Chanukah Gems 5784, that's going to air live on TorahAnytime.com at 9, and then it'll be archived probably and available tomorrow. It is already on YouTube, and it's on Facebook. We will do Be'ezus Hashem after the share tonight. We will do a chak, the first chak of Mishpatim, on the first night of Chanukah. What could be better than on the night of Chanukah to share the light of the Arizal, of the Chidah, the light of the chak? Okay, Tani. Now we learned in the Mishnah that in the event that Marshall burns down Baruch's crops, so on Shabbos, so he doesn't pay Baruch because he forfeits his life by burning down the crops and being Mechal Shabbos, and therefore, come Leibur Rabbineh, he doesn't pay. The same thing is true that if Chatzkel would hit his father and his mother and hurt them and make a damage in them, since he's Chayiv Misa for wounding his parent, he's potter from paying. The Gemara now addresses the fact that any destructive act on Shabbos is not chayiv, because the malachas on Shabbos are to remember those malachas that Hashem rested from in creating. And Hashem didn't do anything destructive. So therefore, if you do a destructive malacha, you're not chayiv, except for 2 exceptions. What are the 2 exceptions? Wounding, drawing blood, wounding, or making a fire. And the reason why those are exceptions is because since the Torah had to tell you you're allowed to do a bris on Shabbos, so if you're allowed to wound, then you wouldn't need a heter to make a bris. So that means that any other wounding is prohibited. And since the Torah has to say that that you're not allowed to, since the Torah talks about the execution of a bas kohen on Shabbos. So that means that you see that even though that's an act that's destructive, you're not allowed to burn, you're allowed to not allowed to make a fire on Shabbos. So the Gemara says, Tani Rebbe Avo, Kamei di Rebbe Yochanan, Kol HaMekalkelin Peturin, all destructive acts on Shabbos are potter. You're not chayiv achatas if you do it b'shoigeg. You're not chayiv skila if you do it with mezid, with not sra. Chutz mechayiv elomaver, except for making a wound or making a fire. Amalei, so he says, no, there's no exceptions. Poik tani lebra, go and teach that outside. That's not acceptable to be taught in the Beis HaMedrash. Go and teach it outside. Chayiv elomaver ain't a mishnah. Even if you wound or you make a fire, you're not chayiv for Chil Shabbos. The imtim tzalaimer mishnah, and if you say you are chayiv, that's only if you need chayiv b'tzarch lekalbay. That's only if you wound because you need the blood. So it's not destructive, it's creative because you need the blood for your dog. Ma'avir, if you make a fire, b'tzarch le'afrei, where you need the ash for something. So the Gemara says, well, what about our case in the Mishnah with Marshall burning down the crops on Shabbos? That's burning. And we say he's not chayiv for the crops because he forfeited his life. Says the Gemara, Tanan Shorish Yidlik Esagadish B'Shabbos chayiv. If Marshall's axe burns down crops, he's chayiv. V'hu Yidlik Esagadish B'Shabbos. But if Marshall burns down crops, potter, because he's chayiv b'nafshay. Now, since it compares Marshall burning down the crops to his axe burning down his crops, Viktani hu dumya deshara, and it says Marshall like his axe. Mashayra, obviously his axe didn't burn it down because he needed it. Mashayra deloy kabayle. It's not talking about where he needed the ash. Afhunami deloy kabayle. So he didn't need the ash, and yet the Ketani Potter mipnei hu nidain benafshay. He's potter from paying for the crops because he forfeits his life. So you see it's Chilul Shabbos even if he doesn't need the ash. So the Gemara says no. Loi, as we're welcoming Ilya Shutman. 2 lines from the top of Lamed Hey Amud Aleph on this beautiful Chanukah night. Chanukah night where we look at the glow of the candle and we think that represents the Or Torah. That's our illumination. Loi, Shairai Dumya Didei. No, the axe is similar to Marshall. Mahu, that it's talking about where he burnt it, he needed the ash, so it's a creative act. The Kabayle, Af Shairai the Kabayle. So also when his axe burnt down the crops, it's talking about where the axe needed the ash. Says Gemara, what kind of an axe does Marshall have? What kind of an axe burns down crops because he needs the ash? That sounds like a very smart axe. Where do we have such a case with an axe? So the Gemara surprises us. If you want to know who's the master of Marshall's house, it's an axe that's a pikeach. The axe got a bite, and the ox knows that ash is therapeutic for the bite. And therefore he wanted to burn down the crops and roll in the ash. So the Gemara says, come on, is there such an ox like that? I mean, even Marshall would have thought of that. His ox? Says the Gemara, as we welcome in Rabbi Kranz for our 28th Zoomer of the evening, 28 on a Chanukah night. It's really a Kiddush Hashem. Says the Gemara, Umino Simra, Umino Yadina. How do we know that the axe did it for this purpose? So the Gemara says simple. The Labasa de Kalia, after he burnt down the crops, we saw him we saw him rolling in the ash. So the Gemara says, come on. Is there such a thing? I mean, this sounds like a Hanukkah miracle. I mean, Gavna says in, yes. There was an ox in the house of Rav Papa. Rav Papa happened to be a beer brewer. He was a wealthy man, Rav Papa, and he had a brewery. And there was an ox in Rav Papa's house. He had a toothache. The ox had a toothache. He went into the bar, he went into the cellar, and knocked off a cover of a beer barrel, v'shasi shikra, and drank the beer, and he got cured. So you see, there are intelligent oxen.
There's hope for me yet.
Yeah, if you would turn into an ox, you would do better. Now, the Mark, welcome. I'm glad you could make it.
Thank you, Rabbi. You always say better late.
100%. Even the last 5 minutes.
The axe made it.
Even the last 5 minutes. And tonight we have
earlier than 8 o'clock?
No, we started at 8. It's now 8:25, Mark.
I know. I'm sorry about that. We started at 8:15. I'll stay after class.
Well, there's a chok after class. There's a chok tonight. Chok Mishpatim 1. Really, really exciting. I'm really, really excited to do a chok on the first night of Hanukkah. That's what is Hanukkah made for, if not for learning Torah? So anyway, Amru Rabbanan Kamei de Rav Papa. So the Rabbanan said before Rav Papa, Mi Matzitz Amrit, can you explain Shoyrei Dumya Didei, that when it says the case of the ox, it parallels the case of the human? V'akatani Shoyrei Shebiyeish Pater. If a shar humiliates, the owner doesn't pay for the humiliation. V'hu Shebiyeish, but if the human humiliates, chayev. Shoyrei Dumya Didei, the ox is similar to the human. Shenischaven levayish, says the Gemara, that he intends to humiliate. Heichi mishkachasa. There's no such case where the ox intended to humiliate someone. Says the Gemara, no, you're forgetting. When it came to paying for busha, it's not necessary to intend to humiliate. It's enough that you had intent to do damage. Remember, we learned that the case of where the woman that was protecting her husband and held on to the private parts, even if she didn't intend to embarrass, she just intended to do damage, she's already chayav for humiliation. So that's the case. The show intended to do damage. Where the show intended to do damage, it doesn't pay for humiliation. But if a man intended to do damage, he does pay for humiliation. Where Marshall intended to do damage, even though he didn't intend to embarrass the person, he still pays for humiliation. Rava says, I'll tell you a whole different shot. There's a din with Kam Leben Ramine. And it's the opinion of a Tana de Beit Chizkiah that we apply Kam Leben Ramine even if the person does not forfeit his life. If it's an act that if he did it b'mezid, he would be chayev misa, then if he does it b'shoigeg, he's still potem in atashlumin. Any act that if done willfully would carry capital punishment, even if that act is done unwittingly, you don't pay the secondary damages. That's we're not going to get into it, but that's the Gemara will briefly bring a proof to this. Rav Amma Masnisim B'Shoigeg. The Mishnah is talking about where Marshall didn't intend to burn the crops on Shabbos. It was b'shaygeg. Either he forgot it was Shabbos, or he forgot that burning is asur on Shabbos, and therefore the axe is also doesn't have to have forethought, because that's what we're comparing it to. So the axe that burns down the crops on Shabbos is chayav, but marshal who burns down the crops on Shabbos is potter, because of the ukiditana masnisan b'shaygeg, ukiditana de beichizkiah. Now this is a famous opinion in Shas. The Tana de beichizkiah, but we learned in the Academy of Chizkiah, maka adam umaka behema. There's a juxtaposition between a human hitting a human and a human hitting an animal. Ma maka behema lo chalakta ba bein shaygig beimezid. It makes no difference whether it was unwitting or willful, because remember, Adam muad la'olam. Adam is always responsible. So it makes no difference if it's unwitting or if it's willing. Whether he intended or he didn't intend. Whether it's going in a downward swing or an upward swing. That makes a difference whether a person goes into gullus, if it's a downward swing or an upward swing. That's why it mentions it here. He's never exempt from payment. Because when he damages an animal, Adam would la'olam, he's always chayiv. Af maka Adam, so also when he hits a person, then loy takli, and we're talking about if it's a capital situation where he kills the person. Af maka Adam loy takli loy bein shaygig lemezid bein miskaven l'shem miskaven. Makes no difference if it was unwitting, if it was willful, if he intended, if he didn't intend. Bein derech yirida l'derech aliyah, whether he had a mind to go down or to go up. L'chayvay mammon. He's never chayiv money. El l'paitrei mammon. Just like he would be exempt from money if he did a b'mezid because he forfeits his life. He's exempt if he does it shaygig too. Can you say that our Mishnah is talking about an unwitting action? It says marshal is potter because he forfeits his life, because he lit it on Shabbos. And if he forfeits his life, he had to do it willfully. No, it says since if he did it willfully, he forfeits his life. What would that be? The kaboy la'afroi, where he needed it for its ash. Hashta b'shaygeg, now, even if he doesn't b'shaygeg, it is potter. And therefore, it doesn't have to be talking about a sophisticated axe that, is burning it down in order to roll in the ash afterwards because of a bite on his back. Okay, just getting underway on a beautiful Hanukkah night, where I'm going to ask Rich, could you just pour this out and get me fresh cold water, please?
I was so proud of my axe.
Yeah, I was proud of it also. It found a house where it could be the master of the house.
It's got a stubborn axe.
Now, Aaron, don't laugh. It's not that funny. The mice says we welcome in Shelley Zeitlin. It's wonderful to have him, and it's good to see everybody in a good mood. We talk about Hanukkah miracles. It's a miracle that on Hanukkah night we have all of you here. I really appreciate having such dedicated Talmidim. I remember when we had our big Olam in Borough Park, and also our big Olam in Staten Island. I was very proud of the Olam when they came out on a Hanukkah night and came to learn. Thank you very much. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'akol niyeh b'dvaro.
Amen.
Okay, now, here, what happens is, Shar sheyarad lefacher shar acher, Marshal Shar is chasing Abi Shar, v'huzik, and we find that Abi Shar is on the road, damaged. So Ze'oimar Shar chayizik, and of course Abi says, Marshal, your axe damaged my axe. V'ze'omer, Marshall says, Marshall, like key, not so. Ela b'sela laka. Your ox stumbled on a rock and hurt himself. So the Gemara says Abi is up the creek because he has to bring proof. He doesn't have proof. You want to take money away from Marshall? It's hard enough when you have a star and it's signed, sealed, and delivered. And good luck. But here, nothing doing. He has no proof. He can't collect. This is an ironclad rule in Shas Klal Gadol. You want to prove it? You have to prove that Marshall's axe damaged your axe. Now, right from achar echad. Here we have Marshall's axe is chasing Abi's axe, and Baruch Ian's axe is chasing Abi's axe. So Ze'aymer Sharcha Hezek. Marshall says it was Baruch's axe. V'ze'aymer Sharcha Hezek, and Baruch says, of course it was Marshall's axe. They're both exempt. Neither has to pay. Shneim Peturim. Now, Im Hayu Shneim Shalish Echad. Now, let's say both oxen belong to Marshall. But remember, they're both tam. And a tam only pays migufa. It only pays from its body. So, Hayu Shneim Shalish Echad. If the two oxen belong to Marshall, then Shneim Chayavim. Then, of course, Marshall is Chayav, because Manushach, his ox did it. But, Hayu Echad Gadol ve'Echad Cotton. One was a big ox, so there was a lot to collect from, and one was a small ox. Of course, Hanizikamer, Abi says, Gadol Hizik. It's the big one that did the damage. So I have a lot to collect from. Vamazikamer, and Marshall, of course, says, Loiki, Elakatan Hizik. It was the teeny weeny one that did the damage. You could take all $10 of it. Or, Echad Tam Echad Muad. One of them was a first timer that only pays a Chatzi Nezek, and the other one was a Muad that would have paid a Nezek Shalom. So on Nezek, Marshall Abi says Muad Nezek. It was the Muad that did the damage. You got to pay me full amount. Of course, Marshall says, like key, not so. Elatam Nezek. In all these cases, Marshall has the last laugh. He says, you want to prove it was the Muad? Prove it. You want to prove that it was the big one? Prove it. If Abi had two that were damaged, Echad Gadol, the Echad Cotton. One was a big one, one was a small one. Vamazikim Shnayim. And Marshall's animals were two. Echad Gadol, the Echad Cotton. One was big and one was small. So Abi had a big and a small ox that were damaged, and Marshall had a big and a small ox that did the damage. So Anizik Abi says, Gadol Hizik is a Gadol. The big one damaged my big one, so I have plenty to collect from. The cotton is a cotton, and the small one damaged the small one. Hamazikaimer, of course, Marshall, who is ever pragmatic when it comes to his wallet, Marshall says, the small one did damage to the big one, so there's not much to collect from. The gadol as a cotton, and the big one did damage to the small one where it didn't do much damage. Or echad tam ve'echad mu'id. One of Marshall's was a tam and one of them was a mu'id. HaNizik Amar, the Nizik says that the mu'id hizik is a gadol. The mu'id damaged the big one, so you have to pay the nezik shalom for the big one. The tam has a cotton, and tam damaged the cotton and only pays chatzi nezik for the small one. Of course, Marshall says, like he not so. Ela tam is a gadol. The chatzi nezik is for the big one, so I only have the big damage. I only have to pay a chatzi nezik. Or mu'id has a cotton, and the mu'id damaged the small one. I'll pay a nezik shalom on the teensy weensy one. And here again, as Marshall is singing a happy tune tonight, you want to AB, you want to take money, you got to prove it. Otherwise, see ya. Now, we know that there's another shita in Shas that argues on the rule of Amoitzi Mechaver Olavaraya. And that's the shita of Sumchus. Sumchus says, Momen Amuta B'Safik Chok, and AB likes this opinion much better. That if there's a matter of doubt, we split it. What happened to Marshall? I think Marshall saw that the situation was, the tide was turning, so he left. Or maybe the Frankfurters were burning. So anyway, Amar Reb Chia bar Abba, Zoi Soimeres, this Mishnah shows that Chalukin alav Chaveirav al Simchas, that the Rabbim, his colleagues, argue on Simchas. The Amar, Simchas says, Maman Amutim B'Safek Kolkin. He would disagree to the whole idea of this Mishnah. He would say that if AB says my shar was damaged by Marshall, and Marshall says that it was damaged by a rock, they would split it. Right? So we don't hold like Simchas. So now, there is a big ambiguity in the case of the Mishnah. When Marshall and AB have this difference of opinion, when they have this, did AB leave us too? Boy, Marshall and AB went to slug it out.
They took their oxes with them.
Yeah, here comes AB. He's coming back. Yeah. AB, I thought you went to look for Marshall. Anyway, so there is a big ambiguity over here. When AB says it was Marshall's axe that injured my ox, and Marshall says, like he, not so. Is this talking about a case of Bari and Bari? That AB says, I saw it? I saw that it was Marshall's axe, and Marshall says, I saw the rock? Or is it talking about Shema, where each one says, well, maybe it was your axe. And Marshall says, maybe it got damaged on a rock. Or is it talking about maybe a case of Bari and Shema, where, for example, AB says that it got damaged by your shar, and Marshall says, well, maybe not. Right, so what exactly is the situation over here? So, Amalei Rav Abba bar Mamel, Reb Chia bar Abba. Reb Abba bar Mamel said to Reb Chia bar Abba, Amar Sumchas afilu bari bari. Does Sumchas say, Maman amuta b'safek cholkim, they split it even though AB says, I'm sure that it got damaged on a rock? Amalei in. Yeah, so the Gemara says, yes. Amar Sumchas afilu bari bari. Says the Gemara, Omamai demasnisim b'bari barihu. How do we know that our Mishnah is talking about with each one said a certainty? Diktani ze'aymer sharcha yizik. Marshall says, AB says to Marshall, your shar did the damage. V'ze'aymer loiki. And Marshall says, not so. So this sounds like that they're each saying a definitive statement. Maskevla Rapapa. So Rapapa says, Midaresha bari bari. If the Reisha is talking about where they're both definite, then Seifa Nami bari bari. The latter cases of the Mishnah would also have to be where they're both definite. Now, before we get into the next Gemara, I want to tell you an interesting halacha. If, let's say, I tell Mark, you owe me a bushel of wheat. And he admits that he owes me a bushel of barley. He doesn't even have to pay me the bushel of barley. Because since I demanded a bushel of wheat, it's like tantamount to me admitting that he doesn't owe me barley. Isn't that an interesting halacha? Now, with that in mind, let's learn the next Gemara. So the Gemara says, if the Mishnah is talking about each one is making a definite claim, Maskler Papa, Midereisha Bari Ubari. So then that would mean that Seifa Nami Bari Ubari. That the Seifa is also where they both say definite. Aim a Seifa, Hoya Echad Gadol ve'Echad Katan. One was big and one was small. In other words, Marshall had two animals, one big and one small. Nizik Amar, Abi, who wants to, they're both tam, so Abi wants to collect Migufay, maintains it was the bigger animal that did the damage, so he could collect more. So Nizik Aimer Gadol Hizik. Umazik Aimer Loiki, and Marshall says not so, Ela Cotton Hizik. Or, let's take another case. Echad Tam ve'Echad Muad. There were two animals, one was a Tam and one was a Muad. Nizik Amar, Abi says it was the Muad Hizik. It was the Muad that did the damage. V'Amazik Amar Loiki, it's not so, Ela Tam Hizik. So the din is that if Abi wants to collect from the muad, or he wants to collect from the big one, he has to bring proof. Now, if he doesn't bring proof, so then shakal kidamar mazik. Then he takes, like Marshall admits to, he takes from the smaller animal, from the tam. So the Gemara says, but wait a second. That means that Abi is saying it's definitely the big one. Marshall is saying he's definitely the small one. So we say that Abi could at least collect from the small one. But isn't this the same case as I said before with Mark? If Abi says it was the big one, and Marshall admits that it was the small one, so then how could Abi collect from the small one? He's admitting that the small one doesn't owe him the money. Says the Gemara, name a tavit yufta the Rabbi Bar Nasan, the Amartar Nuchitin. If I make a claim on Marshall for wheat, if I make a claim on Mark for wheat, and he admits to barley, Potter, he doesn't even have to pay me the barley. Because since I demand wheat, it's like I tantamount that I'm saying that he doesn't owe me the barley. Ella says to Gemara, that's a very big kasha. Ella, the Mishnah must be talking about Bibori Veshema, where one is definite and one is doubtful. Not sure. Says the Gemara, who says definite or who says doubtful? The Kama Bori man, the Kama Shema man. Who's sure? Is it Abi that's sure? Is it Marshall that's sure? Who's doubtful? Inema the Kama Nizik Bori, that Abi is sure that it was the big one. Abi is sure that it was the big one. The Kama Mazik Shema, and Marshall says, I'm not sure. So Akati Lema Tavitiyuf the Rabbi Bar Nasan. Then it's still a refutation of Rabbi Bar Nasan. Because since Abi says, I know it's the big one, and when Marshall says it's not sure, he pays from the small one, but he shouldn't even pay for the small one, because Abi is saying that it's not the small one. Ella dekama nizik shema. Oh, it's talking about where Abi said, I'm not sure. The kama mazik bari. And Marshall says, I'm sure that it was the small one. So there, Abi says he's not sure. And Marshall says it was the small one. So he could only collect from the small one. Says the Gemara, Umidiseifa nizik shema umazik bari. Since the seifa is where the nizik, Abi is not sure, and the mazik, Marshall, is sure, Reisha Nami, the Reish is also with the Nizik Shema, where the Abi is not sure, or Mazik Bari. V'amar Simchas afilu b'ha, says the Gemara. V'amar Simchas afilu b'ha. Would Simchas say that where Abi is not sure, and Marshall, the Mazik, is sure that it's a small one, even there, Simchas would say, "Maman amutal b'safek kolken." That's a huge chiddush. Let's think about this. Are we going to say that in the case where Abi says, "I'm not sure that it was the big one. I'm not sure that it's the muad," and Marshall says, "I know it was the tam. I know it was the small one." Even over there, with Simchas say, "Maman amut b'safek kolken," the itzrich la'ashmin and delay, that we have to say that the Rabbanan don't hold that way, says Malay. No, in that case, even Simchas would not say, "Maman amut b'safek kolken," where Abi is not sure, and the Mazik says, "I'm sure it was the small one." Rather, Seifa is Nizik Shemet or Mazik Bari. The Reisha is talking about where Nizik Bari, where Abi is sure that it was the big one, or Mazik Shema, and Marshall is not sure, and over there we say Hamaytz Mechava Araya, and in such a case, Simchas would say Maman Amut B'Safek Kolken. Says Gemara, I've only dam your racial sefer. Then it's not consistent, because the Reish is talking about when the Nizik says Bari and the Mazik says Shema, and the Sefer is talking about when the Nizik says Shema and the Mazik says Bari. Says Gemara, that's okay. As long as in one case the Nizik says Shema and the Mazik says Bari, or Bari and Shema, but one of them is saying Shema and one of them is saying Bari, you could switch. Imre Bari v'Shema, Shema b'Bari, Chad Milsi. That's one kind of case. So you could say that the Reish is talking about one way and the Sefer is talking about the other way. But to say that one part is Bari or Bari and the other part is Shema or Bari, that Trey Milinan, that's two separate things, and that you wouldn't be able to say.
Can I add something on this?
1 second. We're going to stop over here, Rabbi Yisai. We're going to learn a chok now. What they do? They took away the green thing. It's over here. If you could bring it to the front. I did the Mishnah Yomis already, Rabbi Yisai, so that I would be able to go straight into the chok. And very important, to Motzei Shabbos, I'm going to be broadcasting from the DoubleTree in Somerset, and we hope to broadcast at 7:45. So there won't be a share down here on Motzei Shabbos. It'll only be on Zoom because I'll be away. So, and Itchy, it's very good to see you.